Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Single Parents Network podcast. I'm Coach Nrgy, the Single Parents Network. I work with both single fathers and single mothers on various life issues, such as all matters of the heart, relationships, marriages, divorces, co-parenting, communicating effectively and peacefully, so forth and so on. So this week, my guest is Ricardo Sierra. He will be discussing the natural advantage. So, Ricardo, please tell us a little bit about yourself and let us know what this natural advantage is all about and how it relates to single parents.
Oh, well, thank you so much for allowing me to be on here. So that's great. And yeah, my name's Ricardo. I am a wilderness educator. I've been teaching wilderness survival skills to teens, children, adults, and staff for about 35 years. And I got interested in that because I spent a lot of my childhood, I was kind of raised by a single mom as well. And then when she remarried, it was kind of a weird situation where the three, me and my brother and my sister were kind of like one family. And then the two new kids were a slightly different situation. And so, it was one of these things where we lived in the woods up in upstate New York, very rural. And I spent a lot of my time like wandering all around the mountains and forests and fields and farmland. And I always wanted to know a lot more about nature and about how the Native Americans could use different things to survive and live. But I never really knew anything. I mean, I went fishing, I tried camping, but I just didn't know what I was doing. And so when I was about 18, 19, I found a man named Tom Brown who had a lot of these wilderness skills that I've been craving to learn. And so he had a school. I went to this school and I just started like learning how to make fire without matches. A lot of the stuff actually now that you see on, the TV show Alone, that series reality show, or Survivor, or, some of the other survival shows that are popular now. Well, back then, of course, there was no show like that. And so I just started learning that and practicing it. And I just wanted to learn everything about living out in nature. I kind of just wanted to get out of society. I was like, this would be fun to just kind of go out there, do my thing. I don't have to deal with a stepfather. I don't have to deal with whatever. And that wasn't my total motivation, but it was just something I really was very passionate about. And I liked how I felt when I was sitting by a fire, carving something, like an arrow or something that was just fun to do. And what happened was that as I was learning, kids would just show up. If I went on a hike somewhere and then I stopped and, built a little campfire or stayed for a little bit, I would just suddenly have 3 kids would appear out of nowhere and just be like, "What are you doing?" And I'd be like, "Oh, I'm carving a spoon." And they're like, "Can we try?" And I was like, "All right." And, 20 years old, I didn't know what I was doing, but I just kept having kids keep showing up. And eventually I started working at a summer camp and teaching these skills in this camp format. I was kind of their, young naturalist wilderness guy at this little farm camp. And I just fell in love with the process of seeing these children, kind of go out in the woods with nothing and then make a fire, or go out in the forest and learn how to build a really beautiful shelter that could keep them warm in a snowstorm or whatever. And when those kids would come out after 3 or 4 days of us camping and learning these skills, they all seemed to kind of stand like maybe an inch taller. They had this like light in their eyes and they were like really excited. And I knew that I was onto something. I was too young to really understand it, but I knew I was onto something that was really important. And that kind of led to me starting my own little summer camp and then having it grow and grow to, what we've been doing for the last 25 years, buying land and building cabins and everything else. And that is the, kind of, if I encapsulate a lot of my journey, that's a big part of it. And the natural advantage is actually a term that I started using because one of my friends submitted an application for me to do a TED Talk. And, unbeknownst to me, and I was just like, hey, wait a minute, what's going on? And they're like, hey, you won. You're going to do a TED Talk next, 2 months from now. And I was like, are you crazy? So I had to put together something about it and make it happen. It was really, really stressful. I don't recommend it in a way because it's just like a constant panic all the time. But out of that, it helped me to really focus on what are the things that are the most important parts of my kind of learning from all these years. And the natural advantage is basically saying that, when children are developed, like all of us, we all of our ancestors, if you go back 200-300 years, 500 years, we all learned about fire making. We were riding horses. We were making everything by hand. Like, it was a world where we were living 99% of our time connected to the natural world. And so what I found is that when children get like a connection to the natural world, meaning they just are spending time in nature, they are building relationships, they know some of the birds, they know trees, they know where to find food, and kind of a little bit about where they live. That's really powerful for them. It gives them a tremendous protective effect. Being out in nature changes your physical hormones in your body. It stimulates stuff. It stimulates your immune system, all kinds of good, serotonin and all the good chemicals that we are all craving all the time. Nature's doing that to us in a really beneficial way. So nature's like one of the key elements in there. But I realized there was two others. And the other was, you need to learn some type of skill. If you can combine that nature contact and you can teach somebody some skill, 1 or 2 skills, 5 skills, something where they can learn how to do it themselves, that is also incredibly empowering. Giving them the problem solving skills, the manual dexterity, the ability to kind of look at a resource and go, oh, with those bunch of sticks, I can make this. I can make a basket. Oh, with those fibers or those plant stalks, I can get fibers and then I can make a rope or whatever. Like, being able to do that means that it's a tremendous leadership development kind of experience in a way. And it builds confidence and so forth. So the skills are really critical. And then the third kind of base of the triangle or the tripod is all about bonding. You have to be able to bond with someone who has the capacity to connect with you. So in other words, doing it by yourself, if I was just in nature by myself, it's powerful. But when I am learning a skill of some sort, whether it's like learning about identifying bird nests or whatever, that builds even more. And then when you also add in the ability to bond and connect with someone where you can share your story and have it really be received in and heard and connected to, those 3 things make an incredible foundation from which to like kind of grow and develop as a human being. And so that's really the principles that we put into our summer camps, into our programs, was to say, how do we make sure that we're hitting all 3 of those every day, and how do we make sure we do that through our programs? Because without, if you just have the nature part and then you don't have anybody you can share it with, then it almost is like more lonely. I mean, it's still good because you're like, oh, that bird likes me. And it's kind of funny because you're like, the robin understands me, even if all my friends don't, or something like that. But it's really, really important. Like, most people have someone where they're like, oh, I could always go to my grandmother. I could always go to my tia, or, my auntie, or I could always go to Joe, the guy in the garage across the street. Like I could go there and the person would just listen to me and I would listen to them and I could just be myself and, you know, share my story or whatever. And so all of those things really tie into that natural advantage. And yeah, I don't really know how to land this plane. I'm just kind of circling the airport, waiting for a runway. I don't know where I'm going, but yeah, that's what I'm doing. And that's kind of what I'm excited about talking about here.
Oh my gosh, this is so different and it's exciting. So you talk about having a summer camp and a program. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Such as, are your summer camps and programs in person only? Are they hybrid, considering everything that we've dealt with in the past couple of years and kind of dealing with right now? Where are you located? Just kind of give us a little
Sure,
bit more about the
sure.
summer program itself and the summer camps.
Absolutely. Well, I'm in upstate New York. So I'm about 10 miles from Cooperstown, which is where the Baseball Hall of Fame is for a lot of people that love baseball. Uh, and so it's in the center, almost the center of the state, about 3.5 hours from New York City. Very wild. And I'm not really running a lot of youth programs right now or camps because my wife is kind of like taken over our center after COVID and has doing a lot of adult healing and retreats and so forth at our place. But I do some individual programs that are, 4-day intensives and things like that. And I do in-person trainings for what I call Forest Educator trainings, where they're kind of an immersion of teaching people how to teach these
Mhm.
campfire skills, how to learn about the plants, how to, explore, do some wilderness survival, and, maybe a lot of these little games and challenges and so forth. And so I do some of that as well. Um, yeah, it's been kind of a bittersweet thing for me because I've done the camp for so long, but COVID really, New York State's really strict, and they still don't really want us to even have camps running right now because they're kind of like, there's no way to prevent all these kids from getting COVID if one person has it. And I'm just like, yeah, that's true. So anyway, I'm still grieving that because I'm getting to be like almost 60, and I was like, okay, I do need to turn the corner on my career and start teaching the teachers. But there's a big part of me that goes, oh, I just want to run around the woods with the kids again. So
I bet.
yeah, yeah, and I do some online training and stuff like that too. So
Okay. And so, for any of our single parents who may be watching right now, what would you say would be the best way for them to connect with you in order to take advantage of your trainings and to be able to help them as a parent
right.
within their own household? Like, are there resources, additional resources, or do you do one-on-ones with the parents? Just kind of go into that.
Yeah, I've actually done a number of programs where, I used to fly to California and like take like 10 kids. There's a group of moms that just said, we want our kids to get a wilderness program. And they didn't want to send them to a summer camp. So they actually had me come there, and, they all pitched in and we had a great time. And I still get people who will say, hey, everybody in the family is going to pitch in and we're going to have a little family reunion for 3 days. Ricardo's going to, come out and teach us a bunch of things. So I have done that type of program. But what I would say, if you're a single mom or a single dad and you've got your kids at whatever age they are, uh, you know, my suggestion is, in a lot of ways, is see what level of nature experience you're comfortable with as a parent, and then see if you can kind of begin to build something into your life, into your daily life or weekly life. Is there one little thing you can do that will uh, help them get something out of that the natural advantage? So, like, for example, my wife and I were really during the pandemic, we were like, oh, we're really online all the time. We're just watching streaming stuff, and I don't know, that's everybody was doing that. And so we started basically just saying, all right, let's turn the TV off at whatever time before we all go to bed. And then I would pull out like a children's book or a nature book or some kind of cool story. And I would just read a chapter every night, and it would just be, maybe 15 minutes. And everybody in the family was like, oh, that's awesome. I feel really good if I can go, if you're reading and I'm kind of just spacing out and picturing the story, there's no TV, no screens, and then we're getting ready to go to bed. It just is a really nice transition way to share and talk and just not leave the basketball game on, which is what I would normally do or whatever. So that is one piece, or it could be just as simple as, oh, here's a really cool skill. I want everybody to, hey, check out this knot that I learned how to tie to, tie down the truck. Or, maybe it's like doing a gardening project where you just get a big tub and you go, hey, we're going to plant some seeds. What should we plant? And then, have fun with it and just go, hey, we got a big tub. We're going to fill it with some soil. We're going to water it. We're going to see what happens. Like, that's a nature experience, and it's also skill building. So anything that we can do, skills can be cooking, sewing, woodworking. I mean, how hard is it to take a piece of wood and just sand it really smooth and put oil on it? I mean, you can do so many cool things if you just get a little bit of structure to start putting it together. And it's a really it's very difficult sometimes to do it in the beginning, especially if you've never had it done for you. So like, that's the one thing that kind of breaks my heart, is that there's a lot of parents who never had a close relationship to nature themselves. And it's really tough to be able to go, oh, let me listen to this guy on, a podcast telling me I got to go out and take the kids out, and the first thing they think is like, I'm going to get Lyme disease. I'm going to get bit by snakes, or, it's going to be all these bugs, and we're going to get poison ivy. It's just going to be, whatever it is, the worst thing you could imagine. Or the things that, they show on TV. It's always like somebody always getting, bit in the neck by a rattlesnake or something. And you're just like, oh man, that is not helpful. You know what I mean? Like, that does not happen all the time.
That's not very encouraging.
No. And so, so what I try to look at is to say, it doesn't matter. You get to start where you're at. So in other words, if you're nervous about nature, you don't need to go into the wilderness. You don't need to like pull over on the freeway and then go down an embankment and crawl in a bunch of vines and, live in the jungle sort of thing. Like, that's, like, I'll do that, but that's because I'm crazy, because I'm also comfortable going there and figuring stuff out. But, you can start at your local park, and then you can go to a little bit more wild park. Maybe you can find a park that you never have been to that has a waterfall, and there's some trails you can go out on. And, you just, if you don't like that, go to the beach, go just anywhere where you can see trees and see nature, and then just be out there, take walk. I mean, it's not about like, running to the top of the mountain or backpacking. That's great if you're into that. Like, don't get me wrong, but you don't have to commit to anything really major. But, it's hard for me to say it because I live here in the country. Like, there are trees in every direction. There's farmland. I mean, we live out here. But when I lived in California for a while, and in Sacramento, there would always be a place where if I was driving someplace in Sacramento, in almost every direction, there would always be like a tree in front of an office building or a palm tree or something. There would be some cool thing. And I would go, hey, take this road because it'll go by this cool tree. Well, I'm going to go say hi to this tree as we're driving by. And it's in the middle of the suburbs. It's suburbs for like 50 miles in all directions. But it was like that tree. I love that tree. Or you drive over a bridge and there's a really cool river underneath. And you go, hey, let's just stop here for a minute and just see if we can listen to the water for 5 minutes. And doing something like that where you just go, hey, let's do 5 minutes, is really powerful for your nervous system. And if you can sort of bring other people into that a little bit, sure, they might go like, okay, my dad's crazy, like that's fine, like whatever. Now you have a story to tell your friends, but um, I mean, anything like that is really, really important. And then just listening to each other when they tell stories of something that happened. So it's not hard to do, but it's just a matter of like trying to say, is there something I can do every couple of days that will help my kids have something modeled. Kids love that rhythm, right? So in my house, it's like waffles. I make really good waffles every Saturday and sometimes Sunday. So they know, everybody in my house knows that if you want those, show up anytime on Saturday, and I'll, cook something up for you, and I'll show you how to make them if you want, whatever. And so that people love that rhythmical aspects, and they kind of really count on that in some ways. And and then it's great. Sometimes I'll be like, hey, I hurt my hand, can you guys make the waffles today? And they're just like, what? We can't do that. And I'm just like, okay, you got to use the whisk and stir the batter. And so now I'm giving them the skill that they can do it for themselves. So eventually I'll say, all right, who wants to make the waffles this week? I'm going to go do something else for 5 minutes and let you do it. And they better be good. But I don't know, it's like it's very psychological building this in, because you have to like look at your kid and say, what do we need to do? So you have to kind of go, hey, we're going to spend 15 minutes at the river, and then we're going to go get ice cream. That works for some kids, right?
Yes.
Other kids, it might be something else. They might go, all right, we're going to go do that. And then we're going to, I don't know. I don't really know. I don't know what else. Food has always been a big one for my kids, but sometimes it's like, oh, we'll go to the movies. If we do this 3 times this week, we're going to go to the movies on Saturday or something.
I'm glad you touched on that, because that's one of my questions that I was going to ask, is for those parents who aren't well versed in nature or anything outdoors. Because let's just say if the average listener, hypothetically speaking, is someone who works a 9 to 5, they go into a corporate building, brick and mortar building, every day that they work. The kid, depending on their age, their child may be in daycare, or their child, may go to school, get on a bus, and then immediately go home. And that's kind of all, that's their routine. And so one of the questions is, how would a parent who's not well versed get their child interested, who's also never been exposed to it? And you did bring up some of those examples, like, hey, if we do this 1 or 2 or 3 times this week, we can reward ourselves, at the end of the week with doing something over here. So
right. You can go to Panda Express or whatever. I mean, whatever it is that they're into. Yeah. No, that's exactly what you have to do. So so one element that I always say is, if you're not comfortable taking kids out in nature yourself, which is fine, then what's important is to go, hey, I recognize that this is important. So then if you're trying to pick a daycare for your kids, pick the daycare with like a big oak tree in front of the daycare, where in the backyard or something, where they can all play, or a big pine tree, or find a daycare provider who it's not just a concrete pad, with that like spongy plastic infused concrete with a tetherball pole, and that's it, chain link fence. Like, that's not a really good place for kids to spend 20 hours a week in. So in other words, find things that that nature is playing an important role for them. And it doesn't, a lot of people, when they say nature, it doesn't mean, okay, you have to, fly to Yosemite and go into the wilderness. It's really about being outside, being connected to, other living things, as opposed to just seeing man-made things. So, for example, I know kids that get a lot of this is like kids that love horses, or they go to a farm, or, so you might, go, hey, let's get some of our vegetables at this local farm. And we're going to go there every Saturday, pick up our vegetables. We're going to hang out. We'll grab a wheelbarrow and help them for 5 minutes washing carrots or something. And it's just like getting them to use their hands and be engaged, and maybe get a little dirty, not too dirty, but just, whatever you're comfortable with this idea of giving them the chance to be exposed to different things and seeing how that feels. It's not, like I remember one dad one time came to our place, and the children were in this like wilderness survival program, and he took his dad all around to, built the shelter we built and showed him all the things we had done. And at the end of when his dad was about ready to take off, he came over and he was like, I thought your camp was just going to be like trying to teach my kid how to live like an Indian. And he goes, and you really did do that. But he said at the same time, he said, I could just see my kid is like, he goes, that was the most my kid has talked to me in like a year. Normally he would just get in the car, put the air conditioner on, and it would just be like, I could never get more than 2 words out of him. And he was so excited. He goes, I don't know what you did to my kid, but he goes, whatever it is, I don't even care. I don't care if they become an Indian and live in the woods forever. I know that's not your goal. And I said, yeah, no, it's totally not. But I'm just, if you don't learn to connect and love something when you're little, then how are you going to love something when you're older? How do you know how do you learn to love yourself? How do you learn to love and care for and build a relationship with, other people? And so, I always say nature is like a child's first relationship. So their first relationship is a beetle or a frog or a butterfly. And so they're looking at that and going, oh my God. I mean, if you ever hold a really cool looking beetle that has that metallic green, shell or whatever, like they're just incredibly magical. And if you can just get out of our heads for 5 minutes and look at that, it'll just transport you to go, this thing on my finger is like another being. It looks like it's from another planet. If it was life size, we would all be like, okay, that would be all we talk about for like the next 20 years. But it's like right here, this little thing on my finger that we all just kind of ignore. Gas prices or, whatever. But that thing is, for a kid looking at that beetle, it's like an imagination bomb. It's just like, they don't know what is going on, but they're willing to stare at it. Butterfly, I don't know, a leaf. I mean, I don't know. When you're out in the woods, you do see like weird stuff. Like sometimes I just remember walking with a bunch of kids and we found a tail of a squirrel. Oh. And so the kids were like picking it up with a couple of like sticks, like chopsticks. And then every one of them had a theory of why the tail was there and not the rest of the squirrel and what happened. And like they just love to just dive into that because they're not living there in the world of us. We're like, we really live in our heads. Yeah. We're just like, I got to check my email and did somebody get back to me? But for a kid, they're willing and able to just dive into their imaginary world. And so the more we can kind of keep feeding that, the beauty is that when you're out in nature, nature's so beautiful. And when you're out there, it's being reflected back to you, all this beauty, and then like you get in the car and you drive. I don't know. I just dropped my wife off at JFK a week ago down in New York City. And we were driving through Queens. And, when you're driving on the highway, I mean, it's just trash, like literally 2 feet of trash on the side of the road for about 5 miles with just like dirty concrete and like, old construction equipment everywhere and cones and those cement things. And we're driving and my son was just like, he goes, I would hate to live here. He goes, I've never seen this much trash. Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, I said, you probably just ignore it. If you live here for a long time, you just don't even see it. But when you go out in nature, it's like everything is beautiful and it starts to seep into you that you're part of it, nature, and you start to feel really good. And, there's bird song and it's beautiful. And, I mean, it's just you just slow down and everything. It's really cool. And so to me, that's the thing I would say is it's really important for kids to have that. And it's also important for us as adults to take that pause and get a little recharge, 15 minutes.
Yes.
15 minutes can really be the thing. Honestly, if you stay for 3 hours and you're hanging out, laying in the grass, watching beetles by the farm, you'll probably they'll probably put you to work or something. Maybe they'll kick you out, but for the most part, it's really cool to do. And yeah, I don't know. I could
Yeah.
keep going. I could keep going for a long time. So
And I can listen to this all day because for me, and a couple of things that you were talking about, I'll hit on. One of the things you were talking about, getting outside, even if it's just for at least 15 minutes a day, that's one of the things I am being more mindful of, especially at the start of this new year, 2023. It's actually on my vision board that's right on my wall right now, is
nice.
to get outdoors more, to let the sun hit my skin and
Hmm.
to breathe in that fresh air, as fresh as it can be living in the city. But to just get outside. And for me, I now look forward to it.
Yeah,
Any day where the weather is nice or clear, somewhat warm, I'm like, okay, what's my schedule looking like today? Because wherever I see a big enough gap, I'm either stepping outside or I'm going to one of the many local parks that I tend to go to. And I'm either taking my chair or I'm taking my blanket and I'm just sitting out and taking it in. And sometimes it'll be just me by myself. Sometimes it'll be my family with me, or sometimes it may be like with a friend, in order, like if I know that they've been going through something and they just need someone to talk to about whatever. I'll make it a habit to now be very intentional about getting outside throughout the week as many times as I can. And I do notice that on the days that I do get outside, I feel better. Like there is a direct connection to your body feeling like it has more energy. Even if you went outside to just relax, you
yeah,
have more energy. I tend to have a better night's rest once I do go back home for that night. And when I get back home, it's like, I'm refreshed. What can I accomplish now for, whatever hours I have left in a day, depending on what time I may have gone out. So that is important. And if I can't get away, like if I have a slightly busier day and I can't go to the park for a couple of hours, then I'll at least just step outside and, just sit out there. I'll take a chair outside and
sure.
sit, cross my legs, and just have my legs popping back and forth, just swinging.
That's
And
right.
I'm literally in such a happy place, and it's calm. It's I can literally feel the sun and its rays just go across every inch of my skin, and it's an amazing feeling. And so that's why I was liking what you were saying earlier. Like you were giving examples, real life examples of if someone doesn't live in nature, if someone doesn't live surrounded by the woods, well, what are some other things? Like you were using the example earlier. If someone has kids that are young enough to be in daycare, well, find a daycare that's not just paved. Find a
Right.
daycare that has actual trees, not artificial grounding, things like that, to where that can be the opportunity for your child to get connected throughout the day, even if you're not able to be there with them. You also mentioned the beach. That was a thought that I had, like, we have spring break coming up here in April soon, and a lot of people tend to go to the beach. So, like, what could be maybe one, two, or three examples of how people can take advantage of if they are indeed going to be at a beach?
Yeah. Well, what's great about a beach is that, like just listening to the ocean, the waves, getting there, you're like got your bare feet in the sand and you're smelling, whatever, seaweed, maybe there's like a dead fish someplace. You're like, oh, it smells kind of salty and some bad, maybe a little bit of bad smell, which is okay. And so what's great is that it kind of lends itself to looking for shells, looking for stuff, maybe we'll find a bottle with a message in it, who knows. Um, but the idea is that it's just getting you out of your everyday routine. And one thing I will say is that when you're outside like that at a beach, if you're out there for an hour, it's always interesting how people, when they come back from the beach, you're exhausted. You're like, oh, I was at the beach all day. And you're like, we were there for 2 hours, and you slept, and then all you did was sleep, and then you ate a sandwich and had some chips, so you go, okay, I don't know. For some reason, I'm just like wiped out. And it takes a lot. We have a lot of stuff that we don't realize that we're carrying. So we have to like decompress, and it may take like 4 days to fully decompress from the stress of our lives. And that's true for kids. It's true for us. So, I always say, give into that. If you have the impulse to relax and sleep and rest or whatever, do that if you can. But at the same time, if you can, sometimes there's like trails near the beach, or, if you're going to a place that's not that familiar to you, look and see like what kind of trees do they have here that we don't have where we're at home. Well, what do they look like? What are the leaves like? What are the trails around? Are there any animal tracks? Is there any other places around that we could explore or go for a bike ride? Or maybe we're going to go to the beach and watch the sun come up. Like if you're on the Atlantic side, you see I'm from California, so originally, so I always think of sunset with the Pacific Ocean. But the idea is that you get an idea of saying, well, wouldn't it be cool to actually get up really early and see the sunrise, and say, hey, does anybody want to do that early and go out there and be the first one on the beach walking after the high tide or low tide? So like any ideas like that, really good, great things to do. I would say, one time I did do that. I had a bunch of my friends and we went, oh, we're going to go see the sunset. We're going to go down to the ocean, see the sunset. And we went down there, and of course it was California. All the fog had rolled in. So all we saw was just like white. There was nothing. But we could hear whales, because whales were migrating. So you could actually hear whales in the water, and you could hear their spouts and stuff. So that was really cool, but we couldn't see anything. But I would say too, that going to places like the beach, it's not just about like, I'm going to fill my head with the Latin names of all the wildlife in the area or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. It could be anything. Like you could gather cool shells and then make a sculpture when you get home, or make, we're going to just fill little bottles up with different colors of beach sand and, put those in the bathroom. I don't know what I don't want to say do a bunch of knick-knacky stuff that, it's just going to be a mess. But the idea is to just kind of like help them to see things in a new way, try things that are different, and just allow yourself the ability to kind of go in any direction and not feel like you have to, it doesn't have to look like just a certain thing, right? It's like getting the skills, talking about stuff and connecting, and then being out in nature. It can look like so many different types of things. But yeah. But
go ahead.
It's cool. Yeah. It's really it helps if most people, when they do go on vacation, they tend to go someplace that has nature there, that they can kind of go, hey, let's go to the mountains, or hey, you might probably, where you are, you might go, hey, let's go to North Carolina or Tennessee, or let's go to the ocean, or let's go,
or the cabins.
You go up somewhere and you're just away, there's nature around you, and you just can kind of unwind. So to me, that's, I don't know, sometimes people go to like New York City, but New York City's got a huge Central Park in the middle of it, and it's pretty cool. So there's a lot of cool things to see even there. There's really big trees in some areas of the city that are really, really cool. So yeah, the thing I will say is that for children, if they build that natural advantage and you work on that and encourage that and see that it's important, and you just try to nurture that along as best you can, and and it's okay to send them to nature camp, or there are a lot of other nature programs around. Get them outside, go to find out if there's a stargazing night or something. Like the more you can do of those things, you're going to really be thankful for that on the other side of it. I have had a lot of moms talk to me over the years where they will call me and they will say, Ricardo, my daughter, she's 13 and she's been at your camp for like 4 years. And they would just say, oh, my daughter had a big blowout with her little circle of friends that she's had for 5 or 6 or 7 years. And she's like, this is the type of blowout where I would be really worried about my daughter, because this is a big social blow at a time when those social network is like critical. And if you're not in that, it's like you're dead. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I was really worried when I heard, she goes, some other mom said, oh, I heard them talking and this thing happened. You better watch out. And she said her daughter came home. And after the whole thing blew up at school, her daughter came home and she was like, oh, are you okay? How are you doing? And she's like, yeah, I had a really bad day. So she cried a little bit. And then she just went out into the back. She was sitting on the deck and they were just talking. And then she said, I'm going to just hang outside for a little while. And she went out into the backyard and they had a little campfire ring and she made a fire and she went into the refrigerator and she got a bunch of vegetables. And then she came out and she cooked her own meal. And, because she had learned that doing that stuff. And so she just started doing things that made her happy and helped her feel grounded and help her through it. And the mom would like tell me this and she was crying because she's like, my daughter did that for like 3 days. She just spent time doing the things that she loved. And the whole thing eventually blew over. But she said, my daughter was okay. She had this foundation, like she was thinking, oh, she's going to fall and she's going to crash. She's going to fall from this like thing of your social. If you don't have that social connection, you're just going to go down to like rock bottom. And she's like, she didn't really fall that far because her rock bottom was up here because she had this network of, the trees and her skills and her family, and she could like communicate and share things. She knew that she could talk to her grandpa or whoever, and she did really well. And I mean, this is a particular story, but I have like at least 30 of those over the years where moms would just call me and go like, Ricardo, it's your camp that did that. It's your program that did that, and I would, she was a pretty nature type mom anyway. Okay. But I was like, no, it's the foundation that we all helped to build for our kids. So, so that she could have that experience. And nowadays, kids will see something and they're just like, oh, I'm not going to look as good on TikTok as everyone else. And the next thing you know, kids are like severe depression. Mm-hmm. And you just kind of like, for me being older, right? I'm like Gen X, I guess. I can't even imagine that because I grew up with no TV. I built that foundation because that was all there was. Yep. It was reading books, oh, you're bored, go outside. Yep. And if you said you were bored in the house, my mom would say, well, you can be bored and, you can clean the silverware. And I'm like, okay, I'm good. But the idea here is like, I can't even imagine getting to that place where I could crash that far. Mm-hmm. But I do see that with kids where they just, they have these like rocky relationships, which is normal, but they don't have anything to fall back on. And so then they just feel utterly alone. Mm-hmm. And there's no relationship. They don't feel like they can do anything. They don't feel like they have any skill. They don't feel like they could be useful. And so, I mean, I'm not saying like not being with nature is the reason that they have anxiety, but it's not the only thing. Obviously, if you're, someone, that's the one thing I have a big pet peeve with people that go like, oh, if you're depressed, just go outside in nature. And I'm like, well, that's not a good thing to say to someone, because if they actually have clinical depression, mm-hmm. you could be out in nature all day long and it's not going to matter. But I'm saying that if you can help your kids get that foundation early, it can just help them get enough of those positive chemicals flowing as they develop so they can go and have healthy alternatives to when they're feeling stressed rather than turning to substances that might be a bad choice for them later on, or bad relationships, or, they don't need to be surfing the web at 2 a.m. and, getting into a, catfishing thing or something. You know what I mean? Like, it's just like, those are things that people do for dopamine or to feel better about themselves, when we want to have something that's really healthy for our kids so that we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. And as you were talking about social media and your teenagers or your kids and their clique of friends or their groups of friends, and you had mentioned TikTok and not being on the devices all day. As soon as you were saying that, I was like, you know what? How can we use the devices in a
Yeah.
positive way with nature? And I was like, well, what if a parent creates like a scavenger hunt type of thing, to where maybe you all go outside in the backyard, or if you're at the beach, or if you are able to go to a park and try to capture photos of something that represents whatever, or see
Right.
who can capture a photo of the most odd looking, like you said, leaf, or the most odd looking insect, whatever. So yeah, I was
Yeah.
thinking.
And what's great is that if you do that and you hashtag like the local park or your city or something like that, a lot of times, or the news station in your area, a lot of times, if you have a good photo, they'll put it on the news, they'll put it on their website, they'll link to that, they'll put it on their Twitter. And all of a sudden now you're getting props for having a really good eye or sharing something that you love. So, I mean, like, yeah, I'm not an anti social media person or anti computer technology thing. I just know that obviously too much nature can be bad, and too much screen time can be bad too. But the idea is to do whatever it takes. Sometimes that might be what gets you out, is to say, hey, I'm going to take you to this waterfall so you can get a picture for your Instagram. And well, let's
Yes.
go do that. And then while we're there, we don't have to like immediately run away. We
Right.
can actually be there for 15 minutes and see what other things we can see. And, you know, I don't know. I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, there's so many ways we can be creative with, figuring it out. And like the younger children, they love those scavenger hunt type things. When they get older, they might want to do something else. But yeah, yeah, it's really just about trying to give them that energy that oftentimes, as they grow and become more independent, it can seem like, oh, they're getting better. We can just let them grow, but we want to lean in a little bit and go, hey, let's go do this thing with me. They'll still do it even when they're 13.
Yes.
They'll still say, hey, let's get in the car and go. Oh, let me drive by. Why are we going this way, Dad? Oh, I'm going to take you by this big pine tree that's by my office, and it's really cool. And there's these huge pine cones, and I want to show them to you. And then, and of course they're going to go like, really? We drove all the way over here for this? And then you go, yeah, but smell it. Doesn't that smell good? And they're like, no. And I'm like, okay. And then I'm like, hey, I saw you. You were smelling it again. So, you can kind of like have those moments with them where you can say, all right, yeah, it's not cool. And then if you do that like 5 times, then, the next time you're driving in the car, they're going to be like, okay, where are we going now?
Yeah.
And you're going to be like, oh, I thought you didn't want to do that. And then I'm like, okay, I got to think of something. But those are the things that help them. Eventually they'll expect, okay, my
Hmm.
family's weird and they do these weird things. So
Right. Ah.
yeah, I love doing stuff like that. My son is has a wheelchair. He has spina bifida, and he started going around to different businesses. And if we went to a restaurant, he would take a picture of the sign on the restaurant, and he would take a picture of his meal, and he would take a picture inside. And then he would just hashtag, or tag the restaurant in his Instagram. And then he would just write a little something, and he would just go, hey, if you come here, the the cheeseburgers are good, or something like that. I mean, he really didn't, he was pretty minimal.
Okay.
But the owners of the restaurants were like, oh, thank you so much for doing that. We really love your picture. Can we share that on our website? And before you know it, he's going around town. Everybody in town knows him, not just as a kid cruising around with a wheelchair, but they know that he is seeing what they're doing and they appreciate that. And so oftentimes we go to a restaurant and they'll just be like, hey, guess what? Here's some chocolate cake. And he's just like, what? Why are you giving me this? And they're like, no, we just wanted to give that to you, so you get free stuff, and what goes around comes around, right? So those are kind of fun things to see. And and he knows those people. They know, he's got a relationship with them, which is really nice. And because when you're in a wheelchair, it's hard to build relationships for a lot of kids, it might just be tricky to figure out how do you break the ice or whatever. So he kind of figured that out doing that with the skill of Instagram and photos.
Yes.
So
Oh, man, that's awesome. And you were mentioning earlier about if a kid doesn't like learn how to take care of something when they're younger, or love something or connect with something when they're younger, then how well will they be at doing that thing as an adult? And then when you were talking about your son, it kind of it brought a thought back to my mind about that's where having a very, maybe even just a low maintenance type of pet for some families can
yeah.
be helpful, because they learn skills through
Mhm.
that, and they learn to bond not just with the pet but even with the parent, as long as the parent is involved as well and
Yeah.
shows interest in the pet as well. So whether it be like, for me back in the day and even now as an adult, I love fish. So whether it be goldfish or any other fish that you can put in an aquarium at home, for me, that was one of my low maintenance type of pets that I had as a child. And then I even now, continue to do that as an adult. So
Right.
maybe having pets that are low maintenance, cost effective, for your kids,
Sure.
that could be something that can be helpful as well, to help with building those skills and connecting them to nature in that way.
Yeah. I used to have a turtle. I had two little green turtles. They
Yes.
were like, size of a $50.
Yes.
And so they would be in this little, thing that you just plugged in, and it had a little circulating water, and it was just moist all the time. And the turtles were in there. And then, all of a sudden I'd be like, hey, where's that turtle? One of my turtles is gone. And my mom would just be like, okay, well, they might have got out. I'm sure they'll go back in. And I'm like, they're on a desk. How are they going to get out? And then she would like go to the store, get one and put it back in. I'm like, hey, the turtle's here. So I figured out eventually that she was, they were dying at times. But, but it was just fun to like look at another living thing and do that and have that relationship. And yeah, I mean, yeah, there's so many ways to do these things, and you can do it low maintenance, and but you can still get big benefits from that. And you'll know if you look at your kid and you look at their eyes and you look at how they are, if it's working, if they turn around, like my son Javier, he's not really interested in hiking too much because he's in a wheelchair, right? So most of the time he's like, okay, I'm not going to be going to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I'm not going to do all these things. But he loves going places that are really beautiful. Or, like we were driving across country once and there was a big thunderstorm. And he was like, I want to get out of the car and feel the wind, in for this thunderstorm. And so we went out there and he could feel the wind, and it wasn't too bad, was far enough away. But he was just excited. I was excited because he wanted to see that, and he was taking pictures, and he was trying to get pictures of lightning,
Oh,
and or when there's a big storm. So it's like, it's just important for just to know that it's important, and then to kind of, as soon as you see those kids light up a little bit where they put their phone, they're not on their phone immediately, and they're like, let me put the phone down, this is capturing me,
mm-hmm.
just keep feeding that. And sometimes it can take a while, like I do a lot of nature journaling, where I would go, okay, I'm going to go out and look at a plant or something, bring some of it in, I'll make some drawings. And if I just do that on my table, eventually the kids are like, let me see what you did, let me see how it turned out, and so if you do it like 10 times, they're going, these are really good, Dad, you're pretty good, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, yeah, no kidding. But but what happens is that they're thinking like, he's doing this, it's okay to do that. And yeah, it may not have any real commercial value. It may, but it's just about nature and writing a couple little notes and doing that. And those are the kinds of things that just help them to slow down, observe, integrate a little bit, relax. Man, we just need that, right?
Absolutely.
We just
Absolutely.
need that. So anyway, I don't know. I'm hoping that I'm not overwhelming any parents they're like, I've already got my job and everything else, and I'm trying to do the laundry, and then now he's telling me I have to go to Yosemite, every day. But yeah, just get excited about it, because once you start getting a little bit in there, it's going to be fun. And it's better than looking at your kid's eyes when they're kind of glazed over and you can see your kid, the light is kind of going out of them. I
Hmm.
get a lot of moms that will call me and they'll just say, yeah, my son's not doing well. And I'm like, well, tell me what's going on. They're like, he just doesn't have the passion. He's not excited. He was totally like that last year, and then this year I just have seeing him progressively. And I would just go, yeah, that's really hard. And they'll just start crying because they're like, I don't know what to do. My kid is like disappearing before my eyes, and I know that they're not. That's not a good thing. They're not trending in the right direction, right? And so we just want to make sure that we can trend our kid in the right direction. And if you have nature and skills and the ability to share stories and connect, that natural advantage, you will have tools. So you're not just sort of standing there going, I'm trying to raise kids and I have a crescent wrench. And they're like, what can you do? And you're like, I have a crescent wrench. I have one tool. And you want to have like 20 tools or 30 tools and give you that so that you can just engage and keep them moving in that right direction.
Yeah.
So
I don't know if you've ever done this or not, but when you were just throughout this entire time that we've been communicating and discussing the natural advantage, it just kept coming to me about you should create like not saying what you should do, but
right, right.
create like a starter kit, or like a kit
Yeah.
where maybe you send it out every few weeks or maybe once a month, and you have parents who get on your mailing list, and then you send them out certain things to where it's like you take the thinking and the creative, them having to come up with the ideas, or them having to come up with the specific tool or focus or skill for that particular month. Like, you do it for them, they sign up, you send it out to them on like a membership or a monthly basis,
Yeah.
and then there it is.
It's funny that you mentioned that, because during the pandemic, a bunch of parents asked me to create programs and stuff like that. And I actually created a forest box for kids, they call it.
Oh,
And for some reason, I don't really focus on like talking about it as much as I should. But basically, it is a monthly box that has like a nature journal, a couple of like nature activities or games or skills, and then it has a craft, that has something. And then there's like a piece of gear, and there's videos, so you can watch the videos, you can read the journals or read the activity guides. And then I also have a little audio. I don't know if I have it in front of me here, but I have like a little audio story card that you can like go online and download, and it has a story about whatever the theme is. So like last month was first aid, so it had a first aid kit, it had a first aid journal, how to take care of yourself and so forth, talking about first aid. It has stories and games in there too. But then I have like a story card, and the story is all about some of the staff that I have trained over the years, who really were what I call like healers. You know what I mean? Like, they were really about protecting the forest and protecting the group. And there are some people that just it's really important for them to take care and know how to take care of each other. And they're the first person that if somebody gets hurt, they're like, bam, they're right by their side. They're like, are you okay? Hey, don't move. Hey, we're going to take care of this. Like, even if they don't know anything, they're just there, and they're really empathic or whatever. And so I just have stories of like different things that happen, just to kind of like give them a taste of how first aid kind of can fit into our lives as a skill and a nature element in a way. But then the next month is like all about animals, or it's about trees, or I think April is birds, so it's like everything about birds. And so that's kind of one of the things that I do. It's called the Forest Box for Kids. It's like that's the website, theforestboxforkids.com. And they're, yeah, it's just a kind of a fun thing. But it does take effort from the parents. If the kids are too young, you might have to encourage them a little bit. I don't really fill it with like junk. I mean, some of the I've seen a lot of subscription boxes, and they're just like filled with candy, and it's just like, okay, 3 granola bars for $50 a month or something. You're like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm doing the math, and it doesn't really add up. And oh, there was a keychain from China. You're like, okay, thanks. That was 2 cents. So
Right.
yeah, so I try to fill it with stuff that isn't really full of plastic, and it's fairly natural in a way. But yeah, anyway, I just I can't believe I didn't mention that in the beginning, but that is one of the things I do. Um, so yeah, that people can always check that out and see, see what they like or whatever. So
And that website, is it spelled out exactly as it stated, the
yep,
Forest Box for Kids.com?
yep, yeah,
Okay.
super easy.
Fantastic. Yeah, I'm definitely going to check that out myself. I've enjoyed this entire discussion with you as we were talking, because prior to now, us recording, I didn't know exactly what the natural advantage was. Like, I'm finding out at the same time our listeners are finding out. And throughout this discussion, like, you really just had me remembering just how much I love nature and how I've been connected to it.
Right.
Thankful to my parents,
Mm.
who had me outdoors, or who connected me to certain programs. Like my mom, she had me involved with the Girl Scouts. So I learned certain things with the Girl Scouts. My dad, he's just an outdoors person altogether. So I learned fishing. I learned how to hunt. I learned how to use certain tools. I just know how to use my hands. And growing up, I like when you were talking about, let's see, I took a note. You were talking about the Beatles for a few minutes. I have a Beatles story. You were talking about the little small turtles that are the size of a dollar. I have a story about that. You mentioned birds a second ago. I have a story about birds. When you were talking about your mom and the turtles, how one would go away and then all of a sudden it would reappear, I kid you not, I did the exact same thing with my daughter because when she was
Yeah.
younger, and I will never forget this, I still have to pay my little brother back. He bought her a hamster for a birthday gift. And the hamster, I don't know if it was all hamster types, or if it was just the specific type that he got her, which was like a dwarf hamster, the smallest, cutest little thing, but their lifespan was very short.
Right.
And I'm like, you brought her this gift, and I have to now keep it up because she was so young. I didn't want her to experience, death or losing anything at that age. So every time when I would go in and check, feed the hamster, clean the cage, when that time came around, and it was like clockwork. When it came around, it's like, oh gosh, it's stiff, it's on its back. Now I need to go to the pet store, buy another one, try to find one that has the identical coloring, the
I know.
two-tone colors in it, and then replace it. And I did that about 5 to 6 times, and she never knew. Oh my gosh. And I I told him, you are banned from buying gifts. You do not buy
That's
a
right.
live gift.
That's right.
So I have that story also. I've had rabbits, I've had lizards, I've had iguanas, dogs. I have had my share of animals, and I absolutely loved all the experiences. They weren't always good.
Oh
Cleaning
yeah.
the cages or cleaning after them, of course, I didn't enjoy that, but it absolutely taught me skills in life to where I use them today, without even really realizing it. But yeah, if someone could introduce pets to their kids, that would be something that can really help them in their development. I remember going to flea markets and just buying little goldfish and putting them in a little bowl, and that would be it. You get a little thing of fish flakes, and you just sprinkle a little bit in there, however often you're supposed to. And I remember those days. You're bringing it back to me. This is this
Yeah.
is so important. Nature and the human body. It doesn't matter your age. Nature and the human body, the being, just, kids or adults, it's so important.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
important.
no, that's true. Well, now you're the next gift they'll get is like a drum set or something, or a trumpet. You're just like, okay, don't give me the hamster, but now they're going to be blowing a trumpet all the time. You're like, okay, you're
Right.
banned. You're banned.
Totally. Oh
Yeah,
my gosh.
yeah, no, that's true. All of the things, like, what's great is that you have a story about all those things, and then the people listening, like right now, I kind of wish that, I just talked about a lot of stuff. I wish I could actually listen to everybody who's listening, their stories, because they have a story of their grandmother or their brother or their uncle or their dad or mom, and and they're immediately thinking like, oh, the pond that I, at the farm, or where the river, or we all have that because we're all connected in a way, and we just need to help our kids get connected that way, and make sure that there's that priority a little bit. And it's not I don't know, but I'm excited. I'm glad that we have these stories, and this has been a great conversation too. So hopefully it helps some folks out there
Yes.
and inspires them and gets them excited.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh, this was a great discussion. So as we phase out of talking about the natural advantage, I would like to go into my next portion of my episodes, and I'm going to ask you one, two, maybe three little fun questions that are out of the box. Are you ready?
Sure,
Okay,
ready to go.
fantastic. So, what motto do you live by? What motto do you live by?
Um, yeah, man, I have like 10 of them, but my big things are always like, um, people, everyone is always doing the best that they can. Even when they're doing terrible, that's the best they can. And so if I operate off that, that's a huge help for me to, maybe respond with compassion or whatever and understanding. So
Hmm.
that's one of them
That's
anyway.
that's a good reminder. It's we can sometimes try to compare someone else's um, progress or lack thereof. And it's like, well, wait, you're not in that person's shoes. So,
Right.
give them grace and,
Hmm.
be there as a supportive role as opposed to maybe someone who's critiquing them or, letting them know, hey, you could, you shouldn't do it this way type of thing. So I like that. That was a good reminder. So my next question is, what would be your theme song? What would be your theme song?
Hmm. Boy, I have a lot. I have a lot. I
Do
have a
you?
lot of different songs, I guess. I have a very wide range of music and stuff like that. So, um, yeah, that's a cool thing to think of here. Um, yeah, let's see. Well, I would say, I don't know how other people are answering this, but I would say, I have like a Mexican heritage, so I would say like Los Lobos,
Okay.
Kiko maybe, or just a lot. They have a whole lot of different really good, uh, you know, songs that originate from like L.A. and Mexico.
Nice.
So yeah, something like that. I don't know. I'm trying to blank on some of the names of them, but yeah,
Okay.
really good music.
Good stuff. Awesome, awesome. Not a problem. And last one. I think you might have mentioned this earlier, but if not, what's your biggest pet peeve? What's your biggest
Um,
pet peeve?
hmm. Well, I'd say, yeah, I mean, it kind of is interesting because it's like if I go with the everybody's always doing the best they can,
Okay.
then I can still say what's annoying to me, but at the same time, knowing that people are still doing the best they can. Um, but yeah, I think I guess I would say, that what really has been really bugging me in the last, 2 or 3 years has just been this idea of that there can be a tendency for people to just blurt out stuff or share things that are really just kind of being parroted as opposed to having a chance to really process what they're saying and to just think things a little bit through, right? So like it would be really terrible in our world if we actually had, like, where you had a magic lamp and a genie came out and gave you 3 wishes. We would be a mess because people don't think it through, right? So we would just be like, I wish everyone was a squirrel, or some crazy thing. And you just kind of look at it all in that way. So I think it's just really good to consider that. And I think that's the part that's kind of just been interesting to see in humanity, for our culture, just how short-sighted we are and how we're really creating and perpetuating a lot of systems that really aren't being we're not really looking long term enough. And so, but because so I just really, I guess I'm just trying to hopefully help people. It just frustrates the heck out of me. I can't tell you how many times I'm just like, oh, we gotta do better than this, because this is, like, climate change is coming, or uh, you know, our education system's really struggling. We need to really double down on these things and help, build our communities and eliminate stuff. And instead, we're just like worrying about the wrong things. And like that stuff is out there. And I'm just like, God, everybody back up a little bit, slow down. Like what's a real problem versus not a problem, really.
Right.
So, but yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's easy to complain or whatever, but um, yeah. Oh, that, and also, I guess another pet peeve for me is that when people think like, "Oh, Ricardo likes nature," I usually get people that will call me up and go, "Ricardo, somebody hit a raccoon on the road. Do you want me to pick it up for you?" And I'm just like, no, I
Oh
don't.
no, really?
People will ask me stuff, or they'll be like, "Did you see the porcupine on the road? It was crossing the road and went up the hill. Did you see it?" And I'm just like, "I'm in my house. I'm 3 miles away. No, I didn't see it." Like, yeah, but thanks for thinking of me, I
Right.
guess. Like, they're just kind of like, I saw something in nature. I'll just tell Ricardo.
Yes, yes. You have
Really,
marketed yourself well regarding
I know,
nature.
right? People are always sending me pictures of animal tracks, and they go, "Ricardo, what's this?" And I'm just like, use a flash next time. All I see is blackness. Like, help me out. But yeah, I mean, it's tongue in cheek. That's what I mean.
Yeah,
I don't mind. I'm happy to help out, I guess. But yeah, it's
that's
funny.
good. That that's hilarious. I can actually see that happening. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. So thank you for answering those questions and
Sure.
entertaining me, at least, if no one else, for those three questions.
Oh,
So we are at the point of our discussion where I want to give you the opportunity to just share one last takeaway, or just one last thing, anything that comes to mind that you would like to, a final thought that you would like to kind of wrap up everything that we discussed in.
sure. I guess the thing I would maybe just to do that wrap up is to think, if we if you're listening to this right now, just remember that, you're whoever you are. You're not your job. You're not kind of a wheel in the cultural machine that is like, oh, I'm the manager of such and such, and I have to do all of these things. Like, at our core, we all really uh, are built and designed to, live in small communities and care for each other and work together, and that it's really okay to just take that time, that when you're out in nature or when you're by yourself, to just remember that our bodies and our minds and everything that's been developed, it's been developed for hundreds of thousands of years, as hunter-gatherers, as farmers, as people that live close to the land. And that when you do slow down, a lot of that original, what they call the original blueprint, maybe a part of us can kind of come out. And when it does, you really will know. You'll know because it'll feel really good in a way that you just go, I don't know what's going on. I have this happen all the time when an adult is sitting there and the kids are working on a craft, and I go, here, take this stone and scrape this stick with the bark or something. And they just go, I don't know it just feels so good. Just like you're scraping a stick with a rock. But they just love doing something simple, and just don't be afraid to just like let go, sit, lay out on the ground, whatever. Just do those things, because that's really at our core. And that when you do that, you can really feel good about yourself in a way that you lets go of all this stuff that we think we should do or should be all about. And that's my wish, is that you'll feel good and really get that natural advantage. So yeah.
Yes.
Hope
Awesome.
you can do that.
Yeah, definitely. And that's a great way to wrap that up. And my final thoughts on this, for everyone who's listening, the parents, or even if you are the kid, the child, and you're listening to this episode, one thing that I would also suggest is to start getting out there, even if you don't necessarily live in nature or don't live anywhere where there's a lot of trees or green grass or a lot of parks, then maybe consider taking advantage of your local museums, your local exhibits that are out there. So there are bird exhibits, there are butterfly exhibits, even like botanical type of gardens that you can go to
Right.
to get connected with nature. And I'm big on cost effective things. So if you Google your local county or city, or even connect with your local library to see what free days that are open to the public, to where you can still take advantage of getting into those types of places as maybe a good place to start. And then you can also just go to your backyard, as Ricardo mentioned throughout this podcast. You can start outside in your own backyard. And if you happen to travel, if you are blessed to be able to travel, go to the beach, go to the cabin, wherever you're going, be intentional about scheduling some time with yourself and or with your family for you to just connect with nature as well. So there was a lot of great information that was shared throughout this episode. I was super excited. I hope all of you enjoyed it as well. And so, Ricardo, this is a time where I want to give you the opportunity, give you the floor to let us know how we can support you, to let us know where we can connect with you and contact you. And if you have if you have a website or social media or any other programs, or like you mentioned, the Forest Box, make sure you let us all know that in this moment, so therefore we
Okay.
can support you.
Absolutely. Yeah. So you can find me at theforestboxforkids.com. There's also another website that I have, because I do teach teachers and parents and educators, and it's called theforesteducator.com. And I do online trainings there, and also you'll see some listed residential trainings. And from those two sites, you can find me and you can send me emails, and I'll be happy to chat with you. And I love to hear feedback. So if you have a story or something, feel free to reach out to me. I also have a website, and I mean, like on those websites, you'll see my social media links, Instagram, things like that. And if anybody wants to watch my TED Talk, it's if you just put TEDx.com, Ricardo Sierra, something, my TED Talk will come up, about saving the eye children from nature deficit disorder, which is a weird top name for my talk, but that was what my friend thought up. So yeah, so those are the best ways to get a hold of me. And yeah, you can check out my stuff, and that'll be great.
Awesome. Thank you so much for your time. Everyone, make sure you go support, check out those websites, because as you can see, between just this conversation between Ricardo and myself, we came up with a lot of different experiences or examples for things that you can do with your family in order to just help with those three areas. And the first is nature, getting out and connecting with nature. Problem solving or skill building, and bonding with someone who has the capacity to connect with you. So this is great information that we all can absolutely take advantage of and use right now in our daily lives. So this is it for this episode. That is all that we have for you all today. Make sure that you follow me as well. Go to my website, CoachNrgy.com. And as a reminder, Enrgy is spelled Nrgy. You can connect with me there. Let me know if you would like to become a client of mine. Also, if you would like to be a guest, I am looking for guest speakers also. So make sure you connect with me via my website. And if you enjoyed the conversation that we had today, make sure you put a comment below in the description, or at least share it with someone else who maybe can relate. And I am interested in hearing your pet stories also. That would be cool to be able to just maybe come back and create another episode of the stories that people submitted to us. But thank you again for your time, everyone. Make sure that you take care of yourself. And as a reminder, always remember to keep smiling. Bye-bye.